This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana coming to you from Nairobi. In our top story, the Communist Party of China is honoring its outstanding members ahead of its centenary on July 1st. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, handed out the July 1st medals at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing this morning. CGTN's Zhao Yunfei reports.
Honor Guards present the July 1st Medal, the party's highest honor. Featuring the CPC emblem and a 5-pointed star, the medals are awarded to party members who have made exceptional contributions to the party and country. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of CPC Central Committee, presents the award. Among the honorees are those who've contributed to China's revolution, reform and opening up, poverty eradication, and the building of a modernly prosperous society in all aspects. One of them spoke on behalf of the group to thank the party.
I take the party's reputation very seriously and the title of CPC member very seriously. What we have done are the things that are still being done by lots of CPC members. The party's centenary is coming soon. I sincerely wish for the party to remain young forever, the prosperity and strength of the great motherland, and the happiness and well-being of its people.
The CPC Central Committee says the honorees have created spiritual treasures for the party. Among the 29 medal recipients, 4 are over the age of 100. 3 are honored posthumously. General Secretary Xi urged all party members to learn from these everyday heroes.
July 1st medal recipients are heroes coming from and deeply rooted in the people. They are ordinary heroes who are dedicated to their work without a complaint. Their deeds and spirits can be learned by others. They prove through concrete actions that every party member can make great contributions to national rejuvenation for the party and the people, with firm faith, strong will of striving and resilience, and taking actions at usual, critical and difficult times.
Besides awarding the July 1st medal, the CPC is also recognizing 349 outstanding members, 262 workers, and 309 grassroots organizations. This is the first time the Communist Party of China has awarded the July 1st medal, as it celebrates 100 years since it was founded. More will be handed out in the future on major anniversaries. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, at the Great Hall of the People, Beijing.
Well, earlier we spoke to Professor Xie Lu from the Renmin University of China. He talked about the qualities of the recipients who are awarded the July 1st medal.
They consider themselves as ordinary people. They consider themselves as warriors because they are called heroes. Well, what makes people to called heroes? Because they fight in the front line of different sectors of the cause. For example, they are fighting the poverty, they are fighting the sand, they're protecting the kind of environment, and they are fighting the loss of education. They even protect the borderland for China. So they share the kind of the spirit of perseverance, and they share the spirit of insistence, and they share the spirit of responsibility. I think that's the common quality of this kind of awardees. We have seen that the 29 recipients of the award, they are just kind of normal or ordinary workers, ordinary police officer, ordinary kind of scientists in their respective fields. So I think in the future, what the Chinese authority expect from the people is that everyone holds on to a high level of hope, and everyone holds the future kind of prospect and responsibility and this kind of dedication, because each and every party member are the actors and the participants of the great cause.
Now, the Communist Party of China is considered among the world's most successful political parties over the last century. Our various correspondents spoke to several political leaders on the lessons African nations can learn from the CPC's development agenda.
Now China is now the second economic power, and it's en route, maybe in the next decade or so, to emerge as the premier economic power of the world. This is how it should be, because for the last 5,000 years, the Chinese civilization has been continuous. So there is something which is in Chinese statecraft, which has made them withstand the pressures where other civilizations have fallen by the wayside. But the good thing is that the Communist Party has taken those positive aspects of Chinese history and fused them with a modern approach to economic management.
I am taking the opportunity as a representative of the Al-Wafid Party, which has been established 102 years ago. This proves that there are similarities in the history and struggles of both countries and political thinking in the last century. The people and youth must look at history and struggles of the fathers and leaders who began the struggle in China and learn from it. We should all work together towards developing humanity, spreading peace and justice.
I want to congratulate the people and the party, the ruling party, the Communist Party of China, for attaining this huge growth, huge development, which in fact emulates the rest of the world. We, my country, also learns a lot from what they have accomplished in areas, especially in the areas of poverty alleviations, which has alleviated millions of Chinese out of poverty on a regular basis, in the areas of comprehensive development that actually, the trajectory that elevated China to this level, as you have said, from developing nations category to the level of the developed nations, and as a country with the second largest economy, with the second most powerful nation on the planet Earth. They must be congratulated for this, and the rest of the world, countries like ours, have a lot to learn from them in the areas of reform which we are undertaking, and in the areas of, as I have said, poverty alleviations, in the areas of fighting corruptions, capacity building.
For the anniversary of the Communist Party in China, we must stress that the Chinese president is a great leader who looks at us as good friends. Myself, as Vice President of the Arab Parliament, I confirm that China is the first to promote human rights here and the first to support Arab countries and doesn't interfere except to benefit the countries in the region. I tell the Communist Party, you have delivered a successful political roadmap for China, a model for political parties around the world. The Communist Party will remain and grow even more. The Chinese Communist Party is a successful model for economic, political and cultural renaissance, with strong ties with Egypt in particular.
The Bond is a television quiz show aimed at African audiences. It tells the story of the Chinese Communist Party and the story of China-Africa cooperation in a lively and interesting contest. An award ceremony was held for this round's contest, and various representatives attended the event, including government officials such as the Chinese ambassador to Burundi and various media houses.
The television contest is an innovative project of cooperation between the China Media Group and various African media houses. It involves documentaries that tell the story of the relationship between China and Africa. The aim is to enrich the cultural life of the Burundian people.
Our programs allows our viewers to be able to find different themes that can inspire them in their development, in their daily lives. I already said in my speech is that this Sino-Burundian cooperation helps the radio television, National du Burundi, not only to diversify, but also to be able to learn lessons from elsewhere. China being ahead of Burundi, I hope that viewers can find their accounts. There are subjects that can can deal with such aspect of life, and everyone will find subjects that interest him at fixed times, which allows them to take advantage of this Sino-Burundian cooperation.
1st of July 2021 is the 59th anniversary of Burundi's independence and also the centennial anniversary of the Communist Party of China. The Burundian audience also took this opportunity to express their congratulations.
The Chinese Communist Party has just passed 100 years of existence. In their program, we see that China is well organized. Now, when you go to China, you will see that all things are beautiful. There is a good organization which comes from this party. That is why I quote him a lot. It is a copy to other parties outside. It's a model. I congratulate the Chinese Communist Party very much.
At the end of the competition, nearly 18,000 responses were received from 28 African countries. The total audience of the program is estimated to be nearly 200 million people. Jin Kyo, CGTN.
And turning to news from South Africa now, the country's former president, Jacob Zuma, has been found guilty of contempt of court and sentenced to 15 months in prison. Our correspondent, Angela Coppola, has more from Johannesburg.
We've heard from his official spokesperson who was recently appointed to say that he seemed very surprised that Zuma had actually been given that 15-month sentence. In fact, he says it's unconstitutional. The judge, when making the ruling, reading out the ruling, said these were exceptional circumstances. So Zuma wasn't treated as a normal litigant. He, in fact, was, because of his standing in the community, had to be treated differently. And that's why they handed down that 15-month sentence. And also, it doesn't appear that Zuma has responded himself directly just yet. We heard from, like I said, Zwanele Manyi, who's the spokesperson, who said that they're going to accept the ruling as it stands right now. But there's no word from Zuma directly. We've heard reaction from his daughter on Twitter suggesting that she's not making any comment right now, but they are kind of going to accept the ruling. It does remain to be seen how his allies like Ace Magashule, who's himself facing corruption charges and expulsion from the ANC, and how he's going to react. He's been in court with Zuma for his arms deal court case, so he's been a big supporter there. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen yet in terms of the armed wing, the military veterans so-called wing of the ANC. They've undertaken to defend Zuma to the death. They've been on standby and guarding the Nkandla residents in KwaZulu-Natal. And so we haven't heard from them yet. And we're going to see what happens in the next 5 days, but it could be quite interesting as more and more feedback does come in.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has raised concerns about terrorist groups advancing in Africa. Speaking at the opening of a high-level conference of heads of counter-terrorism, Guterres stressed that supporting African countries in preventing and countering threats must be a global priority. Guterres said Al-Qaeda and ISIL have continued to exploit social grievances and gender stereotypes to inspire lone actors and co-opt other groups.
More resources need to be marshaled towards addressing the grievances that terrorists exploit, standing up to hate speech and discrediting terrorist narratives. And victims and survivors have a key role to play. Youth should also be at the center of these efforts.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the army says that an Islamist militia with links to Islamic State is responsible for 2 blasts in the eastern city of Beni over the weekend. There has been increased security in the area with the subsequent closure of schools, churches and markets. One of the blasts occurred at a Catholic church and the other at a busy intersection. A suicide bomber was responsible for the second hit and died in the explosion. The army identified the bomber as a Ugandan national.
There was a bomb that exploded in the church, and we are staying far from it. This is a new church which is just 3 years old. This just happened, and we find ourselves far from our parish. Our presbytery is in the middle of the parish. My analysis of this is that this is a sign of insecurity that shows we are insecure. It continues to instill fear in the hearts of the Christians because in our parish there are many displaced people who have fled the war in the bush and sought refuge in the city. And so when the war comes to the city itself, it's even worse.
Meanwhile, there are reports that Islamist group Boko Haram has a new commander. Details of the new man at the helm are still scant, but former leader Abubakar Shekau was killed last month after a battle with the rival Islamic State West African province. Shekau's killing was yet another indication of the expansion and growing influence of ISIL-linked militants, which is raising concerns in the region. Weeks after his death, a group of Boko Haram fighters pledged allegiance to ISWAP. The message was in a video released by the fighters, which was produced by Islamic State's official media arm. Boko Haram and ISWAP have been engaged in a violent rivalry for years. Well, the DRC and Nigeria are just some of the countries where ISIL-linked militants have made inroads in recent times. Let's bring in our correspondents, CGTN's Deji Badmos in Lagos and Chris Ochomringa in Kinshasa for more on this. Deji, let's start with you. A new commander for Boko Haram. What do we know about the person that is the new man at the helm?
Well, Lindy, not much is known about this man. His name is Bakura Modu. He, before the death of Boko Haram, he was one of the top lieutenants of, before the death of Abubakar Shekau now, he was one of the top lieutenants of Shekau. So, and we know that he had been leading the Boko Haram unit that was in charge of the Lake Chad Basin area and had been a top commander of Boko Haram for quite some time. And so when Abubakar Shekau died a few weeks ago, he was the one who actually appeared in a video announcing and confirming the death of Shekau. And now it's been confirmed that he is the new leader. His name is Bakura Modu, as I said. He is said to be a descendant of Mohammed Yusuf. Mohammed Yusuf is the founder of Boko Haram. Of course, as you know, he was killed in 2009, precipitating the insurgency that we have today. So not much is known about him, but he's vowed to avenge the death of Shekau. He's vowed to take on ISWAP, and he's vowed to continue to fight to ensure that an Islamic caliphate is established in the northeast of Nigeria. Lindy?
Well, let's now just turn to Chris Ochomringa in Kinshasa. Chris, we understand that the army is claiming that an Islamist militia with links to Islamic State is behind recent attacks in the eastern DRC. Can you tell us more about this?
That's right, Lindy. The Congolese army says that the two blasts that happened in Beni on Sunday were carried out by the Allied Democratic Forces. This is an Islamist militia that has its origins in Uganda. They said they arrested two people who were walking with the man who detonated a bomb in Beni, and these people revealed that that suicide bomber was a Ugandan national, and so they have found that link. They're also saying that all the attacks that were carried out in Beni bore all the hallmarks of the methods of the killings that the Allied Democratic Forces has been carrying out. They said they have been using improvised explosive devices in the past, and that's why they have blamed it on them. There are some security analysts in the DRC and the UN that has said previously that they have not found strong evidence to link the Islamic State to the Allied Democratic Forces rebels. But some Congolese officials say that there is a link. Actually, President Felix Tshisekedi traveled to the United States a couple of years ago and asked the government, the US government, to support him to fight the Allied Democratic Forces who are getting support from the Islamic State and are seeking to establish a caliphate in Central Africa. And the US government said they would support him. They did not specify how exactly they would do it, but that is the position here. The government believes that there is some link between the Islamic State and the Allied Democratic Forces. And this also coincides with a letter, a telegram that was issued by the rebels, the Islamic State, saying that they were behind the bomb blast that happened in Beni on Sunday. It hasn't been, officials here haven't been able to independently verify it, but that is what's going on here. Lindy?
Of course, the presence and influence of ISIL-linked groups is a matter of concern in Nigeria. Coming back to you, Deji, You know, Abubakar Shekau dies at the hands of ISIL-linked militants, allegedly, and a number of Boko Haram fighters have also, as we understand, pledged allegiance to ISWAP. How are these developments likely to impact counter-terrorism measures in Nigeria?
Well, first off, let me just say something about that video. Of course, it's a propaganda video, and we saw in that video that there were no top commanders of Boko Haram in that video. We just saw fighters. So that speaks a lot of the division now. It speaks a lot about the division within the ranks of not just Boko Haram, but ISIS itself. What people will tell you, what security experts say is that, look, the current infighting, the fighting now between ISWAP and Boko Haram presents the Nigerian government the opportunity to go in there and finish this insurgency once and for all. Since there's no unity among the fighters, they've been taking on themselves. So, but you know, it's left to be seen. It's left to be seen now how the Nigerian government and the Nigerian military now responds to the situation. But the truth is that the insurgency is far from defeated, and in addition to the insurgency, we are also seeing the threat of the Niger Delta Avengers, for instance, in the south of the country. You have the indigenous people of Biafra also in the southeast of the country. So a very tough time for the Nigerian military, no question at all, and for the Nigerian government. But the truth is that as far as the insurgency is concerned, it's far from over. But then, as I said, a lot of security experts think this is an opportunity for the Nigerian troops to finish this once and for all. But of course, it's not going to be easy because we have also seen that some elements of Boko Haram and ISWAP are also working together, and they vow to continue to carry out attacks now against the Nigerian military, and they've also vowed to ensure that their caliphate is established. So I would say it's still a very tough one, but all the same, the Nigerian government says it is up to the task. The government has ordered some military hardware. The expectation is that before the end of the end of next month, more, for instance, fighter jets are expected to come in, and it's expected that that will be a game changer in Nigeria's fight against the insurgency. Not just the insurgency now, but also against banditry, of course, which is affecting the northwest of the country and the north central. Lindy?
So a number of pockets of insecurity. That is, of course, a serious challenge. But coming back to you, Chris, in Kinshasa, the ADF seems to be changing tactics. What's fueling this recent spate of attacks?
Well, Lindy, according to security analysts I've spoken to, they're saying that the ADF is changing tactic because from way back in October in 2019, there was a military offensive, a large-scale military offensive that the DRC government launched to wipe out all the rebel groups in eastern DRC. They're estimated to be more than 100 of them. And so when that operation was carried out, there were lots of attacks against civilians. So what happened is the government decided to declare a state of siege in May this year, basically replacing all the civilian leaders in two provinces where there have been a lot of attacks, North Kivu and Ituri, replacing all those civilian leaders in that area with military leaders. So the area is under military rule. And what the leaders in those areas, these military officers, have been doing is they have been collaborating with some of the civilians to get to know the hideouts of some of these rebels, and also people who have been collaborating with them. So there have been a number of arrests made, and that has angered very many of the rebels, and that is why they are carrying out attacks. They are targeting civilians to send a message to the government that they are still a formidable force and that they will continue wreaking havoc in the region. So it's kind of reprisal attacks to try and anger the government. That is why they are changing tactic. They are using improvised explosive devices, targeting large gatherings and instilling fear among the community. The government officials have told people to stay calm and urge them to keep away from markets, schools, and other places where many people can gather, so that they monitor the situation and step up operations against these rebel groups in the east of the country. Lindy?
Chris Ochamringa, thank you so much joining us there live from Kinshasa, and thanks also to Deji Badmus live for us in Lagos. You are watching Africa Live. Time now for a short break. Still ahead on the program, Kenya to start receiving 13 million J&J shots in August. And the World Food Programme appeals for funds to mitigate acute food shortages in South Sudan. Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories. Let's have a look. We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. Kenya is set to receive the first batch of 13 million COVID-19 vaccines from Johnson & Johnson in August. President Uhuru Kenyatta made the announcement and said this will help accelerate the country's vaccination drive. The East African nation has struggled to secure vaccines for its citizens to allow it to fully lift restrictions aimed at containing the pandemic. So far, only 1 million Kenyans out of 47 million have had their first jab. According to Kenya's Ministry of Health, only 300,000 are fully vaccinated. Kenyatta, who spoke after the World Bank approved $130 million to purchase the jabs, has extended containment measures, including an overnight curfew, for another 60 days. The United Nations World Food Programme is calling for more funding to mitigate acute food shortage in South Sudan. The WFP is warning that without urgent attention, famine could become a reality for millions of people in the East African country. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more.
The World Food Programme says by next month, around 108,000 people in South Sudan are expected to be in level 5 famine classification, which is a catastrophe stage of food insecurity. The acute food shortage is mainly in the eastern and northern parts of the country.
The people of South Sudan are suffering from an accumulation of shocks over the last few years, whether it be climate change with the 2 years of unprecedented flooding that the country has faced, whether it's economic decline caused by the depreciation of the South Sudanese pound, the very significant increase in the cost of food in the country, and of course what has happened because of COVID-19 in terms of the interruption to supply chains and that's impact on the cost of living in the country.
The United Nations says there is an increase in the level of intercommunal violence which is disrupting agriculture. It warns that unless the insecurity problem is resolved, the country will continue to experience food shortages. The World Food Programme says an estimated 7.2 million people, representing 60% of the country's population, are expected to face high levels of acute food insecurity this year. South Sudan's government says it is working to address the problem of insecurity and support agriculture development in the country. The government says it has signed an agreement with the World Bank worth $113 million to support farmers with supplies like fertilizers, ox plows and insecticides to fight desert locusts.
The government is turning to agriculture and other related ministries to see how they can support the country, how they can support the economy, how we can grow enough food, not just for ourselves, not just for our families, but enough food to sell and eventually to export to the neighboring countries.
The United Nations World Food Programme says it needs funds to provide tools and training for those facing food insecurity. The organization wants to help people recover from the shocks and promote resilience in South Sudan. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
As foreign and development ministers gather in the Italian city of Matera, the focus is partly on Africa, as the meeting is set to adopt the Matera Ministerial Declaration. The declaration affirms the G20's commitment to addressing food emergencies. These include building resilient and sustainable food systems. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that 257 million of the world's undernourished people are located in Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic is reported to have dramatically increased the number of food insecure people on the continent. Well, Abebe Haile Gabriel, the Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, tells us more about the significance of the G20 discussions on sustainable development in Africa.
We have been calling for a whole government integrated approach to issues of agriculture and food security in terms of a policy response. In Africa, we're dealing with multiple and overlapping crises, climate extremes, transboundary pests and diseases, conflicts, economic downturns, and so on. And COVID-19 is a later addition to this. High vulnerability to this crisis define Africa's production and livelihood systems, and with huge and far-reaching impacts and consequences. If I give you some of the data, even before COVID-19 pandemic, there were about 250 million hungry people in Africa in 2019. The prevalence of undernourishment has been on the increase between 2015 and 2019. And COVID-19 made matters worse and made it more complicated. It added between 23 and 39 million more people to the ranks of those undernourished in 2020. And healthy diets are not affordable to the majority in Africa. We understand the relation with the link with the non-communicable diseases in this regard. The incomes of rural producers, but also for agri-based small and medium enterprises were slashed down. More vulnerable groups as a result, women, youth, displaced people, pastoralists, smallholder farmers, and so on, impacted more. So the fact that this is being discussed at the G20 meeting at this moment is particularly significant for Africa because we expect those discussions will be followed by more effective partnerships and investments at country level.
Uche joins me now with your latest business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The International Monetary Fund to announce an extended credit facility for Sudan. And high food prices pushing millions into poverty in Nigeria, according to the World Bank.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, the executive board at the International Monetary Fund has noted that Sudan reached the decision point for the highly indebted poor countries initiative. As a part of the decision point, the IMF is expected to announce an extended credit facility for Sudan, which will provide new financing in the form of grants and cheap loans. Now, analysts are saying the decision has come at a historically fast pace, a product of international goodwill toward the country's civilian leaders, as well as rapid, painful economic reforms. The decision point confirmation also clears the path for immediate interim relief on some of Sudan's debt. And moving on now, high inflation driven by soaring food prices has pushed 7 million Nigerians into poverty. That's according to a new report by the World Bank. Now, Africa's largest economy is struggling to contain sticky inflation just months after recovering from a recession, partly caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and a plunge in crude oil prices. Here's CGTN's Phil Ihaza reporting from Abuja.
This market is normally one of Abuja's go-tos for cheap foodstuffs, but that has changed over recent weeks. Some shoppers here say the hike in food prices has gone to absurd level.
I came to the market with a budget to buy some foodstuff that lasts me for a month. But funny enough, I could not even get enough. And it's so sad, it's so heartbreaking right now.
The hike, more than 100% of what we used to buy, it's really ridiculous. Everything is high. The meat, egg was usually 1,900. Now we're buying for 1,500. I really don't know. I don't know how we want to survive.
About 41% of the 200 million Nigerians live in poverty, and that figure is now worsening. The World Bank reports of 7 million more people slipping into poverty due to inflation. In February, the country recovered from a recession it slipped into last year due to impacts from the coronavirus and global fall in oil prices. Yet, Nigeria's economy is import-driven, meaning the country exchanges its naira for foreign currencies like the dollar to ship in products needed for consumption.
One of the major causes of inflation is our exchange rate. Imagine some years back that dollar was 160 something and 170. If you bring in good, that period, it is in that comparison that the price of your good is. Now, dollar is what? Dollar is around almost call it 480 something. That's even official. If you go to unofficial, you get it worse. And by the time you bring in good, imagine how much it's going to be. Our inflation is not basically the COVID. COVID could be a part of it.
The country's Bureau of Statistics says the inflation rate is currently 17.9%, up from 12.4% the same period last year, with food prices accounting for over 60% of the total increase in inflation. Experts say until the country focuses more on producing enough food to feed its population and then ramp up exports, the inflation problem will continue to linger.
In order to drive down inflation, there must be economic activities. You must produce goods and services. And such goods and services have to sell in both local and international markets. We should look at agriculture. Agriculture gives the economy a base. That's why we say that agriculture is the mainstay of most economies in the world.
President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to tackle rising inflation problems in the country while instructing the central bank not to give any money for food importation, rather issue more credit facilities to local farmers and food processors.
It's not clear how long the initiatives of the government will have a direct impact on the prices of foods at the markets, but the hope is that with such efforts, the inflation rates will be brought down to a barest minimum.
That could mean that more consumers can increase their buying power and avoid living below the poverty line of $1.90 per day. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
And let's stay in Nigeria. Smallholder farmers in the country are exploring advanced techniques to help sustain food production in the country. Now, issues of climate change and insecurity are pushing more agripreneurs to opt for soilless farming methods such as hydroponic farming. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reporting.
Farm Lab's head trainer, Samson Ogbole, taking his students through a training session on soilless farming. The biochemist turned farmer started his agri-tech company in 2012 as part of efforts to bypass the seasonality of food production. Despite skepticism from various quarters, Samson's recorded success, and he's now raising a new generation of agri enthusiasts.
The first thing I had to overcome, especially when I launched outwards, to get people to see as they ask questions around, is this healthy? I actually had research work to show experimentally that this is healthy even in the lab. There were questions around, does this ensure food security? And looking at the 5 metrics of gauging food security, it meant all the five. Then the next or the last part of the question, which is where we are right now, is how financially or economically viable is this compared to traditional farming? We are gradually showing people, yes, the setup cost may be higher compared to traditional farming, but a good business does not look at your setup cost, but rather the running cost. And considering that the running cost is way cheaper compared to traditional farming.
Hydroponic farming is a soilless technique of growing crops in nutrient solutions. Food insecurity has been at the center of conversations here. According to the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, no less than 9.2 million Nigerians are faced with a crisis of worse levels of food insecurity. The figures are expected to increase to 12.8 million by August 2021. Issues of climate change and insecurity, especially in the northern farming communities, have been disrupted. So for many, the hydroponic technique seems like a viable option.
I'm here to learn how to grow plants soillessly without soil, due to the fact that we have floods coming into our regions every other year for the past 4 or 5 years. So we're looking for alternative means to grow plants and how we can actually teach others how to grow their own plants, innovative way of farming. That way we can have enough food crops in our state. With what I've learned here, we could practically start growing tomatoes soillessly. We could actually elevate crop production.
Despite the unique benefits of the technique, there are problems of low awareness. Also, the system is limited to some crops like tomatoes.
The area where government should come out should be more of sensitization and exposing a lot of old people to hydroponics farming system. Through advocacy, capacity building, and support in terms of infrastructure needed.
Ogbole has spent the last 7 years training over 10,000 young agripreneurs. He believes that agribusiness is at the core of sustainable development and job creation. But technology-driven agriculture like hydroponic farming would drive the young Nigerians towards wealth generation. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's head to Tunisia now, where close to a dozen African ministers have been meeting to seek ways to boost trade relations between the North and Sub-Saharan Africa. Well, as CGTN's Adnan Shaushi now reports, the conference has also offered an opportunity for the private sector to augment its network following the creation of the Continental Free Trade Area.
Experts at Tunisia's fourth Financing, Investment and Trade in Africa conference discussed several topics, including the financial support in the continent, the major structuring themes for African economies, and the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Officials also shed light on the business environment, sectoral development strategies, as well as local transformation and industrialization in Africa.
This conference, the fourth edition, is becoming a real big conference in Africa, and the purpose of this conference is to make meeting between businessmen and business from Tunisia and from around Africa, and also the presence of international institution and financial institution is to found the possibility, the solution for financing our trade and our investment in Africa.
Ivorian Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Integration and Diaspora urged Tunisian firms to invest in her country in raw material processing. Kandia Camara also called on Ivorian businessmen to invest in Tunisia as part of a win-win partnership.
Côte d'Ivoire decided to restructure its economy with focus on raw material processing. We call on Tunisian businessmen to come to help us process our raw materials. This will pave the way for the structural transformation of the economy.
The Minister of Youth, Entrepreneurship Promotion and Employment of Burkina Faso said the meeting in Tunis is highly important as it will foster the exchange of good practices and experiences in entrepreneurship and job generation.
In Burkina Faso, there are 150,000 to 200,000 job seekers each year, and the only solution is to encourage them to create their own startups and projects, considering that the current employment mechanisms cannot meet all needs.
The Tunisian president met with the African ministers who took part in the 4th edition of the International Conference on Financing Investment and Trade in Africa. Qais Said stressed the need to ensure optimal exploitation of natural and human resources available in Africa as part of a new development model. Experts called for setting up a platform in Tunisia to facilitate trade between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. In addition, African officials and ministers urged decision makers to create a continental free trade area. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, Europe's new vaccine passport program has excluded Covishield, which is the AstraZeneca vaccine manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. We'll be looking at the implications of this on Africa. All that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, Cape Town's kelp forest named as one of the new 7 wonders of the world.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in South Africa. Cape Town's kelp forest has been named as one of the new 7 wonders of the world by Bloomberg. Also known as the Great African Sea Forest, it gained international recognition through My Octopus Teacher, a documentary based on a man's relationship with a sea mollusk. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
The Great African Sea Forest is a wonderland beneath the waves off the Cape Coast of South Africa. It features as the backdrop in the award-winning documentary My Octopus Teacher, done in conjunction with the Sea Change Project. The kelp forest has made Bloomberg's list of the world's new 7 natural and archaeological wonders.
The kelp forest ecosystem has a massive role in climate change, and in many parts of the world kelp forests have declined dramatically or disappeared altogether, and it's not a simple matter of just reversing. You know, once it's gone, it's gone. And I think with the sort of attraction from the My Octopus Teacher film and then having an added name of being a 7 natural wonder of the world, people might come and explore it.
Kelp is a microalgae which thrives in colder waters. It provides a rich ecosystem for millions of mystical creatures and an undersea marvel for curious humans.
The kelp forest has always been a very special place for me. I have dived all around the world, and it always surprises people when I say that the kelp forest is my most favorite place in the world to dive. It is like the forests of the land. The forest of the sea is a home to so much life. It is a place where biodiversity thrives. It takes care of the carbon that we so recklessly create.
This natural wonder has thrived compared to many others globally, which are under threat from rising sea temperatures caused by climate change.
The next generation is our future, and if we don't protect this environment and create that connection and that love, there will be nothing there for them. Whatever we can do now to inspire future generations is critical. The way we can do it at Sea Change, being predominantly media, filmmakers, storytellers, environmental journalists, and we do have a scientist in our team, is we continue to tell stories that are informed by science.
If it wasn't for the ocean, our planet wouldn't be a place where humans can live. All life on Earth is sustained by the ocean. So our actual existence and survival depends on the sea. But I think the more we talk about it and the more we shine the spotlight on this, like this nomination has done, the greater chance of success we have.
The Great African Sea Forest spans 1,000 kilometers and is estimated to be twice the size of the Grand Canyon in the US. It adds to Cape Town's allure as an international travel destination. Judy Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Coming up in your sports news, up next. Ghanaian boxer Samuel Taki looking to impress at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours?